Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so excited to be here today talking to you right now. We've got an amazing lineup. We've got some hot breaking news. I mean, it broke a little while ago, but our understanding is still developing. People are tuning in from YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn right now. If you're on right now, go ahead and hit that like button. Let us know. I see people coming in. Hit that little round of applause. We've got a phenomenal lineup right now. We've got Oded Carmi, president of DN Van Lines. Give a wave. Hey, Oded from Beantown. We've got Dan Bradley, Director of Government Relations from IAM. Little peace sign, little pre-election peace sign. That's good.
There you go.
Remember. We've got Michael Gonzalez, Chief Operating Officer from Denali Group. How's it going, Michael?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. I'm so excited. Everybody's here. People are coming in. Go ahead, leave a comment. Let us know you're in the house watching. Hit that like button. Let us know where in the world you are. Give your company a shout out. Leave questions, leave comments, leave your thoughts. We're going to try to answer all those. We got a whole bunch of people tuning in right now about this. This is great. This is fun. We even got drivers on here. We got people. Sandra Clary from EDC. Shout out to EDC. She's shouting out Emily Kozabowski. Shout out to EDC in the house. Georgia Engel. Hi, everyone. What's up, Georgia? Michelle Sellers. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, I want to give a big shout out right now, too, to my buddy Thomas Bailey. It is Run, Eat, Sleep Week at Worldwide ERC. Side note right now. So if you are watching this right now and you want to participate in that, eat a healthy meal, get 6 to 8 hours of sleep, run, jog, or walk a mile every day this week. Tommy, baby, that one's for you, okay? So, yeah, there you go. Keeping it moving here. Moving along here. We've got people checking in on the LinkedIn. Olivia, what's up? We got Stephen Meyer, driver from Hampton Roads Moving. What's up, Steven? Steven was getting at me before. When I told him we were going to be talking about this, he's like, with all due respect, how many shipments do you haul and how many SCACs do you operate and all this stuff? So, Steven, this one's for you, buddy. I can't wait to hear your questions in there, okay? From a driver's perspective here. Let's see. Mary Ellen Tratina. Hi, Michael. Chuck Bailey. That's one wild. You know what? This is a good opportunity really quick just to kind of like level set real quick who we've got. So I want to kind of go around the horn and I want to really just kind of introduce each of you for people that don't know who you are. I know there's a lot of people that do, but just real quick, kind of what's your what company do you represent? You know, what's your role and kind of how do you fit into this puzzle? So Oded, I'm going to start with you and we'll just kind of work around the clock there.
Sure. So I own DN Van Lines, president of DN Van Lines Moving and Storage. We control 3 TSPs that we manage and operate. Very involved in the Defense Personal Property Program, and now am working both in the governance of IM and ATA to further our causes in these kind of areas. That's about me.
Nice.
To Dan.
Let's go to Dan. Yeah. Oded, that's my job, man. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You're the steak. I'm the sizzle. Okay. Shake and bake, baby. Dan, you're up. Go ahead and give us a little intro to yourself.
All right. I just want to make sure I'm allowed to answer because Oded hasn't told me I should yet.
It's Oded, may I?
Hey, I'm Dan Bradley, Director of Government and Military Relations at the International Association of Movers. I've been doing that for about almost 2.5 years, not quite. Prior to that, I was a Department of the Army Civilian and Surface Deployment and Distribution Command for about 8 years. And prior to that, I was in the Air Force, retired. But my last job in the Air Force was the Director of Defense Personal Property Program, DP3. So, and then, you know, in my role with IEM, I try and connect our members to issues and things going on in the government and connect the government back to the perspective of our members as well. So that's my role.
So Dan, is it fair to say you've kind of been working this program from the association side and the services side for quite a while?
Yeah, I mean, I had a gap there for a good 8 years where I was doing freight on the government side.
Oh, okay. You're one of those guys, freight
I'm one of
guys.
those guys. I'm a freight guy.
Well,
And we like to say it's all. We like
Not
to say it's all Dan's fault. By the way, everything is Dan's fault.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll put Dan's email up there too if you want to send him some hate. No, just kidding. Dan's a great guy. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, Michael at Gonzalez from Denali Group. I've been in the industry for about 17 years. We're an agency. We own agencies. We own SCAC Management Company. I try to plug in wherever I can, try to stay as plugged in to the GHC concept without how it will affect our business. So I keep my ear to the ground like everybody else. Lots of rumors flying around. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that and maybe pull out some truth and separate rumor from truth and fact and see what we can do.
Maybe spread more rumors. I mean, whatever.
Maybe.
Whatever.
Yeah.
No. So, okay. So here's the deal. I want to just like kind of level, just put this out there, and then I want to hear from you guys on this one. So when we were at the IAM conference, what is it, a week ago now, maybe a week and a half ago, this bombshell dropped, and it was right in the middle, Dan, of your session with Chuck, I think it was, right?
Right.
What was the news that came out that was just earth-shattering that we're here to discuss today?
Yeah, while we were providing our global household goods, an inside look at Chuck's crystal ball, right? Because like Michael mentioned, there's a lot of speculation about things that were happening and did happen. Little less truth because some of it's just kind of shrouded in that kind of mystery. But what we had heard, from various areas was that the Government Accountability Office, GAO, protests. So two of the bidders that did not win the award of the Global House Goods contract protested to GAO certain aspects of the award process. And that what we heard while we were giving our little talk here was that the protests, portions of the protests had been sustained. So, people were going crazy in our chat box saying, end the session now and talk about the real stuff about what happened with the protest. We thought like we had some good information to provide regardless of that. And then, but we did, we let it run its session, and then we started talking about it in our live Q&A session. So it was exciting times.
All right, so there was four and I don't know nearly as much as y'all, so I'm gonna shut up. But there was four finalists. Two of them put in a protest. That protest was sustained. What does that mean? Because when I hear sustained, I'm thinking like Law and Order, right? Somebody has an objection, sustained. Like, but what does that really mean in layman's terms for us out here? This is just us movers over here. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll speak to it if you want, but sustained meaning. As a protester, we protested this portion of the award process, and GAO said, we agree with you. We sustain your protest. We agree that there were problems with this portion of the award, and so we're going to sustain that and answer back to the agency, being the DoD and Transcom, to say, hey, we feel like there was some merit to this protest, and we think you need to take a look.
Okay, so I want to know what those elements were, and I'm gonna ask Oded because he's smiling like he's smiling over here. So I want to hear
a couple of things you got to keep in mind. First of all, the rarity of a sustained protest. If you go to the GAO's website, they release the protests that they adjudicate, and it's a very small percentage of them that are sustained. Most of them are either dismissed or denied. Dismissed. For various reasons. The party doesn't have interest, they didn't supply enough information, denied, they reviewed it, they didn't like it. So the fact that the protests were sustained in the first place is a big deal. And then I'll add to this is that technically the GAO's decisions are not binding. The services do not have to follow what they say, but 99.9% of the time they do.
So wait, so time out. So this reminds me of like the Electoral College, right? Like they don't have to vote the way, their constituents say, but I mean, they probably will. So the GAO, which is not the contracting arm that issued this, and they are not the customer, the services are the customer of these of these moving services, but they're like an independent
Government Accountability Office. That's what they are. GAO, Government Accountability Office. They hold the government accountable. And basically, if the protests weren't sustained, the next natural step, if you want to continue the battle, is to take it to the Court of Federal Appeals. And what I will say this, if the GAO issued a ruling and then the services decided not to honor it or not to listen to it, then your chances in the Court of Federal Appeals are probably going to be pretty strong, because you're going to have a government report that supports, you know, everything that you're saying. So it seems to make sense that they're going to follow the instructions. And now, you know, you asked me a question, what were the main reasons or the main portions of the protests they upheld? And I'll give you my understanding of it. I will say that, to my knowledge, the redacted report has not yet been released. Dan Bradley, has it been released, a redacted report? I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen anything come out on the public site.
So three-pronged, three reasons why the protest was sustained.
Janet, you getting these prongs right now?
Yeah.
We got
Ben, here goes the rumors. Are you ready? Here goes the
Yes,
rumors.
I want to hear some prongs. I want to hear some unredacted prongs. If you're watching this right now and you want to hear some prongs, hit that applause button over there. Leave the pro prongs support in the comments. All right, let's hear the prongs.
So the first prong, right? When U.S. Transcom put out the request for procurement, they kind of they outlined the process. And part of that process was an in-person presentation, kind of like if I came to your office, Ben, and gave you a PowerPoint presentation and sang and danced like a Shark Tank presentation in front of you to try to impress you, right?
Yes.
So all the bid teams, they prepared those in-person, presentations.
And when you say U.S. Transcom, you're talking about United States Transportation Command at Scott Air Force Base, which is the one that purchases all the transportation for the military. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sustained.
So the in-person presentations never occurred. So one of the kind of points here is, hey, you said that the process is going to be done in a certain way. You eliminated a certain part of that process and didn't take it into consideration. So that maybe created an unfair circumstance for award. That's number one.
Can I jump in on your number one?
Jump in real fast?
Please jump in.
Okay, I think the in-person presentations happened. I don't think that was weighted in the decision. I'm
going to second Michael's statement.
Okay, so even better. So they did occur. They were considered sustained. Protest my So you know, that's an important part of it, because it revolves on how they basically evaluate the bids, right? And then the second prong is also basically on that, and has to do with the way the rates were compared or evaluated. And in the GAO's opinion, the ways in which the rates were evaluated did not result in the most favorable rates being chosen for the government, for the U.S. government. Now, again, this part of it, kind of like what I told you at the beginning, is nuanced, and so I can explain it incorrectly. So, guys, if you want to correct that aspect of it as well, please speak up.
I think what you're saying is what the government would call a best value trade-off, right? So I think the part that people argued, and again, I don't have backline information to direct information on this either, but from what I've heard, I think part of what they asked for, or what the contract was based on, is a best value trade-off. So if you looked at what, as a contractor, I can provide, the manner I'll provide it, the nature in which I'm going to do that, and the cost of it, you put those two things together, and that's your best value score. And that best value trade-off, I think, was argued that, hey, we think there were some problems in the nature in which you evaluated that best value trade-off. So that, you know, it's possible, and they've said it. It's not a technically acceptable low cost. That's not what they went for. That's not the nature of this contract, right? It was a best value proposition. So you could push a higher rate out there, but based on all the things that you were going to provide in your evaluation, you could still win the contract.
And I want to say a couple things about that, right? So it was rumored that the bid that was accepted was the highest bid. That's the rumor I heard.
Highest cost, you mean, Ben?
Highest cost, sorry. Highest cost bid. That's
I don't know if it was the highest cost bid, but rumors were that there were lower cost bids that were submitted that weren't chosen.
Right. And the best value score methodology currently on a per SCAC basis is 70% quality, 30% price. Is that accurate?
70% CSS, 30% rates, yes.
Do we know, or do we have an indication of if they use that same 70-30 weighting to I mean, is that still their principle?
I don't know, but I don't think so. I don't think that was specifically spelled out. I think it was based on Again, I don't have insights to how acquisition laid out the rules for the team that did this, but I don't think there was a 70-30 kind of trade-off.
Okay.
But-
So it's kind of hard to know if the quality outweighs the cost if we don't necessarily know how highly weighted the quality portion was.
There's no way to demonstrate quality in advance of doing the work. It's more of capabilities. So it's basically what you're promising to deliver at what cost is kind of what from my understanding was the best value algorithm there.
Real
Mike?
fast, Ben. So they do have expectations in the proposal. So even though quality might not be 70%, they did tell you what you had to maintain quality at. So there were those expectations out there. I believe, I want to say there were 4 or 5 things that they were really focusing on, quality being one, price being another, capacity was one, I believe. So I mean, there were a multitude of things. Now, how deep into it, I don't know. I don't know the exact specifics.
And I think to Michael's point, there is something that I believe they did go after. Each of the bidders had to present CSS scores for to prove quality, right? To show quality. So if I was this contractor and here's my team, what were the CSS scores of my team that I'm bringing into this fight, and what did that look like?
That's a whole fascinating concept to be. I mean, I don't even know if we have time to get into.
It gets so messy, Ben, because if you think about it, how many SCACs are being managed by different people, right? So you're saying my SCAC is at this score, but is it really your SCAC? Are you really managing it, or is someone else managing getting that score for you? How do you prove that?
Is it the SCAC owner or the SCAC manager for that?
Right.
SCAC,
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
I would say that was probably the most interesting and probably the most in-depth part of the protest that I'm interested to see in, because that's really a judgment call, right? So for the GAO to sustain a protest on something that's really a judgment call really means that there were probably pretty strong deficiencies in the way that they were evaluating their best value score. And so that's really what I want to get out of the report.
Do we expect that report to be released sometime soon, or I mean,
I don't know.
I haven't heard.
On the GAO website, it says that a redacted version will be put out at a certain point, but we don't know when.
Dan, in your experience working on the other side, how redacted is redacted? I mean, is it like the Kennedy files, or is it like we're just going to black out Oded's name as the whistleblower and then leave the rest of the whole thing intact? I mean, these are hypotheticals. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think those hypotheticals kind of run the gamut, unfortunately, because it depends on how much of that is specific agents, contractor-specific information that shouldn't be kind of put out, especially in light of the fact that chances are there's a rebid coming, right? There's new proposals coming out, which you don't want to give somebody insight to somebody else's bid. So I suspect it'll be decently redacted. But again, this is the decision, not the bid. So, to the extent that they can then talk about it, they'll do that. But
all right, I want to get to Oded's third prawn, as Chuck Bailey would say. Chuck loves prawns. We're going to get to Oded's third prawn, and we're going to talk about the rebid scenarios. We're also going to answer whatever questions you have, and by answer, I mean wildly speculate here. So go ahead and leave those questions in the comments. Really, love it. We got a few people checking in here. I just want to go ahead and honor those people. Amanda, we got Derek. What's up, Texas? Emily, Chuck White. Look at Chuck fighting through the anesthesia. Love you, Chuck. Jay Peroni, Marco checking in here. This is great. What a look at this. Look at this guy. Tim all snuck in the back door. That's great. Hey, Tim, appreciate you. Francine, Steve, Chuck, Charles White. Chuck White says, Oded, the new member of the IM Executive Committee. This is your future, people. All right. I'm just kidding. Congratulations, Oded. Chuck admits what we all suspected. It's all Dan's fault.
That's my boss.
Chuck Bailey says to my steak and sizzle analogy that Ben is the A1 sauce. I'll take it. Josh Green, great to see this panel. Tim Hellenthal. The news is actually that all shipments would be handled by a small town in Guatemala.
I heard that same thing, Ben.
That came out during our IAM panel. So there you go.
Does anybody want to explain this joke, or do we just want to leave this up to people?
It came out during the IAM panel. It's Dan's fault again.
And I fueled the fire because I just found out. So the session had began, and I put something in the chat to the extent of big news coming out about GHC. And the second that it was like catnip, the second that I said that, people could not let it go. And before you knew it, there was like calls to just cancel the conference and start talking about it. So
I'm surprised, Oded, that IAM even still talks to you. But
I know.
Just totally hijacked the conference. It was all going really well until Tim Hellenthal always fact checking us, which is great. Tim, we appreciate it. It says the word is the GAO sustains about 15% of protests.
That's small, so that's 15%. That's not many.
Yeah, but it's far off from 0.01 that you stated, Oded. 99.9.
He's 99% of this time the services go along with the GAO recommendation or transfer.
No, that's what I said. You're right.
Along with.
Okay.
I said 99.9 of the time they go with a recommendation of GAO, and that might be off too.
If we're all fact checking each other, I think this could all work. Checks and balances, right? Let's see here. We got any questions coming in here before we get to prawn number 3?
Love shrimp. I love how we're on to shrimp now.
Aren't we all a little hungry right now? Or is it just me? All right. So, we've got a couple questions. I'm going to save those until after we get to prawn 3 here. Oded, what is the third prawn here?
Well, the third one is the one I think we're all most familiar with. And that is the price fixing scandal that ARC's parent company, Norwegian company, was convicted of, and whether there's a relationship between Team ARC and that company, whether it be a sister or parent company. As we know, a few months ago, Transcom pulled back the award from Team ARC and then re-awarded it, saying that the wrong entity was picked from a drop-down menu, and really, nothing to see here. The GAO's perspective, from what I understood, is not necessarily, they didn't say, hey, there is a connection here. All they said was that Transcom didn't do enough due diligence to prove that there wasn't a connection, or to fully, process that whole allegation. And so basically, it's kind of go back to the drawing board. You really got to take a look at this closer, and if you make a decision, already have this kind of allegation covered, so that there's you've done your homework on it and you can explain why it's not an issue.
Can you go into just a little more depth there on what you're talking about as far as this parent company connection?
Listen, I'm the bluster guy, Dan's the detail guy. I'm going to give this over to Dan.
Incoming.
Raise up a huge speculation and then throw it over to me. Great.
I'm going to light this Molotov cocktail, pass it over to Dan Bradley over here at an undisclosed location.
What in the world? I don't have, I mean, all I know is, what Oded said essentially, right? That what we had heard was that there was some question as to the nature in which, the parent company, who they were evaluated as, who are chose in their relationships to those kinds of things. And that, again, they pushed that back to Transcom. Transcom kind of stopped the award process, then waited about 2 weeks after doing some further evaluation and said, we're comfortable with what happened. And they went back at it again. And to that extent, my understanding is that the GAO said, yeah, we'll sustain I don't know how they put it, tell you the truth, because I don't have the report, but I think they sustain the idea that they should look at that process again, or something.
A little more than like a 10-day or 7-day, like, hey, yeah, just give it a second. Yeah, we're good here. Yeah, so I'm just going to read this article on military. It looks like Military Times. I'm not really sure. Mm-hmm. It says ARC is Transcom awarded the historic contract to ARC on April 30th, but competing bidders filed protests over the award, and the contract was pulled back for review June 9th over allegations that the company had not been transparent about its ownership or the executives who run its parent company, Wallenius Wilhelmsen Group. ARC is the U.S. subsidiary of Norwegian company Wallenius Wilhelmsen, which also owns 2 other foreign shipping firms, one in Norway and one in South Korea, that have been fined for price fixing and rigging international cargo bids. The parent company and sibling company have similar names and shared the same one until 2017. They were the same name. So it makes sense that someone could pick the wrong name on a drop down. Imagine being that guy, picks the wrong name on the drop down. Like, hey, Carl, did you finish the bid? Yeah, just submitted it, Tom. Which name did you pick on the oh gosh.
Ben, what else on this topic is that it's not like everybody that there aren't other parties that are involved in this entire GHC bidding process that have, skeletons in their closet. The question really is whether or not they disclose those skeletons, and whether U.S. Transcom took the time to really do their due diligence and to clear, say, hey, we understand, we completely understand the problem, and we accept it. Here are the reasons why it's okay. And I guess that's really what, from my understanding, what the GAO sustainment of that part of the protest is. It's not necessarily saying, hey, you can't re-award it to ARC because there is, a smoking gun here. It's more of you need to sit back and really evaluate this and make sure you take the time to answer that question.
Yeah, I know this isn't your job, right? I know you wear a lot of hats, but this is not one of them, right? But isn't a, what is it, 80, 90, $100 million fine for price rigging at the Port of Baltimore a fairly germane thing to consider when awarding a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year contract for transportation services? I mean, don't you think, sorry, am I? Yeah, no. Yes, no. This seems to me to be fairly obvious, something that should be considered and take another look at it. And I don't understand how you come to the same conclusion after you dive into that. But anyway, that's me.
Right.
So,
yeah, I would just say real quick that I think the wording that I've seen on that was they sustained a challenge to the agency's responsibility findings, right? So it's kind of squirrely words, but responsibility findings. In other words, who's responsible for the contract, who are responsible officers, who are whatever that is, right? But those are the kind of generic words that I've heard.
So let me, Dan's obviously one of the most, first of all, IAM is one of our, leading industry association, and Dan wears the government, hat there. So he's probably one of the most informed people that you could have on this topic. And so, Dan, would you say that I covered the three main reasons, or are there other things that I missed?
Yeah, I think it was that one that we just talked about. There was some talk about the conduct of the discussions, whether or not everybody got it kind of, some of the discussions about the contract were equal amongst all parties, or whether some people got more information or not. So the conduct of discussions. We talked about the evaluation of oral presentations. I believe everybody did one. I don't think they were ultimately counted in the overall package. And then there was also challenges to the evaluation of the proposals. So the nature in which they evaluated the proposals, the technical kind of capabilities that they went after, and then the challenge to the best value decision. So I think there were a number of things like that sustained amongst, and there might be even a couple more, but between the two protests, the protests weren't exactly the same. They touched on some of the similar things, and so some things in some proposals I believe were not sustained or rejected, but other things were accepted. And generally speaking, I think then you have the picture that I just tried to paint, maybe too quickly.
Well, so in short, everything, right? So everything.
Part of the process was flawed. So there was also some scuttlebutt early on that I heard about a memo being released about the target price of this contract. Did that factor in at all, or was that satisfied before?
It was actually satisfied before. I don't think it was a part of this protest because Transcom, after that came out, actually, I think they alerted people about that themselves once they found out about it. And a release of a government cost estimate for the contract was released somehow inappropriately to potentially one of the bidding parties, and therefore they believe they talked to GAO, and GAO was good with their solution, and their solution was to release that information to all bidding parties so that everybody.
So Dan, I just want to make it known, I think that was right before the IAM conference that you guys had before. So if you guys want to get really cutting edge information, just go to an IAM conference, because it's like right at it or right before it, or it's amazing how it all plays out.
Nice little plug there for IAM.
That was a nice plug. Yep.
Thanks, Michael.
So I'm going to take some questions here. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments. And then we're going to kind of pontificate on what happens next.
And before you ask a question, I'll just say one thing.
Sure.
obviously the natural question or the rest of the discussion will be, what does the future hold and what's the path forward? And don't take any questions on that yet. Take good questions about everything else, because one of my good industry friends, Bruce Boyarko, well connected in the military movement community, actually came out with a detailed timeline for what we're looking at moving into the future, with I'm looking at 13 different time points that really gives us an idea of what we're looking at going forward.
Did he publish it?
Published it to me and told me that I could talk about it during this.
Okay, cool.
I can provide it to you.
I just didn't know if it was something that Brucey B or yourself could put on the Love and Relo page on LinkedIn or Facebook. So, Bruce, if you're watching, miss you, Bruce. Haven't seen you in a while, buddy. Let's see here. So, taking a couple questions and comments. Looks like I think it was Olivia saying, very fascinating discussion. Seems like the DoD was non-compliant with their own bid requirements. The irony. Yeah, let me just ask a question. Let me turn that into a question there, Dan. How is this kind of inconsistency possible? Do we have the appropriate, are we looking at this problem correctly? Are we missing some nuance perhaps in this whole process? Are we oversimplifying?
I think there probably is an opportunity to oversimplify it. I think there are a lot of requirements in an acquisition process. I think the people that are sitting on that, that award team trying to figure this stuff out are all real, good Americans like the rest of us, and they're trying to do their due diligence to that, and they're following the guidance provided to them by an acquisition team. But there's the federal acquisition regulation is probably this thick, and it's a tough one, and so they're taking their guidance from an acquisition staff who's done this a number of times, but it's not unusual to sit in Transcom and have a contract go out and have that award protested. So that's, and I know it says 15% there, but when you're sitting in the transportation side of Transcom and the Surface Deployment Distribution Command, who also uses Transcom's acquisition process, it's not unusual to get a protest. And, it doesn't cost anything to put up a protest. It costs you a little to do it, but, it's not an easy process necessarily. You have to take interpretations from a lot of things, and you turn that over to a group of people from probably from Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, right? All the services pay the bill on this, even though Transcom procures the transportation, and so they have a say, or they want to say. And then you bring all this team together, you put them together, and provide them the guidance, and they go out and they do what they're what they think they're assigned to do. So it's not like we put a bunch of numbskulls in a room and this is what we got from it. There's a lot to the process.
Yeah.
To piggyback on that real fast, no one, I think, in this industry thought that it wasn't going to be protested. This is a disruptive change in the program where it's monumental. So I don't think anybody was sitting back going, I wonder if someone's going to protest. We knew that there were going to be protests that happened.
And the chances are very good that whoever comes out of this next time process as the winner, the other people who didn't are going to protest it, right? So
it's that big of a change.
Well,
right.
What's the size of this contract? That's something I forgot to even really state in the beginning. What would you estimate the size of this?
The number floating around is 20 billion. There's certain extensions that to the contract. Dan, you have a better. I think it starts with 8 billion and then goes all the way up to 20. Is that what it is, Dan?
It's from what's been published. What we know is, right, there's a 9-month transition period, then 3 years of the base contract. So if you stopped right there, 3-year base period and 9 months in the contract, the reported award of that was $7.2 billion. And then there are option years and award years. And then an extension of 6 months that could take it all the way out to 9 years and 3 months from the math that I've done. And if you go 9 years and 3 months, it's closer to $19.9 billion at that point.
Okay. So it's not all guaranteed money, but those are the options. That's
No, but if you think about it, Ben, when someone gets awarded this contract, it's so massive. We're talking IT side of things. We're talking infrastructure. It's so massive. How do you switch after you award it to somebody, something this big? It's going to take somebody to really screw up really bad, I think, to transition to a different party.
Well, and I want to ask you, Dan, about that, and keep leaving those comments and questions in here because we're going to get to all of them. I promise you this, but that's a great segue, Michael. Dan, I'm going to ask you, since you worked on the freight side as well at SDDC for 8 years, and one of the more interesting arguments I've heard is comparing this to the DTCI contract as well. It was kind of, in my opinion, the closest thing to like kind of a sole source kind of contract for freight. There's also been the personal vehicle, the POV contract, right? Shipping cars all over the world. In your perspective, kind of being on both sides of it, what is your thought about the general process or the general, let me say, philosophy of a sole source for large scale programs like this within the DoD?
Yeah, I'm going to go technical on you for 1 second because it's really not a sole source. Everybody likes to use that term, right? There's more than one source to the contract. It's a sole provider, essentially, right? A single manager, because sole source in the contracting world connotates the fact that I'm only going out to one person to actually award this contract. Where this bid is open to whoever wanted to bid on it if they met certain requirements. So
it's only asking one person, not awarding one person. So it's a sole provider. Understood.
So, that's right. Right. So
thank you.
The philosophy of it, I was in the on the freight side. There was Defense Transportation Coordination Initiative, DTCI, and that brought in Menlo, and then XPO, as Menlo changed hands or whatever they did, became XPO Logistics. And they provided that capability to go out and move freight all over the country using multiple providers, but them as the single manager, right? And then the jump off from DTCI was the Defense Freight Transportation Service contract, the DFTS, and that's what Crowley has. And that was the kind of the next generation of DTCI. And the difference in those and what we have with the GHC is that SDDC still has, probably when I was there 2.5 years ago, 50,000 plus active tenders on file to move freight. So the Defense Freight Transportation Service single manager contract is not a you don't have to use the contract, and the contractor doesn't have to do. Crowley and their network does, then we'll accept that from the services and move that freight. But if that transportation officer says, I want to use one of STDC's tenders, you can go and use a tender and get that from anywhere. So you have a contract and you have tenders both going after sometimes the same cargo. And it works because now you've got a broad brush of capability across the board.
What percentage, in your estimation, I know we're kind of getting off a little bit on tangent here, but out of my own curiosity, what percentage of freight moves through that program, that Menlo / Crowley, then Crowley program? I'm not good at speculating on that. I know. Wild speculation.
Domestic freight for STDC doesn't mean I should know that. Hold me to that.
Listen, we just throw around billions, like numbers like billions all the time over here. We don't know.
I mean, there's still thousands, tens of thousands of shipments that are handled under tenders at STDC. It's significant amount of money goes through the tender process.
Well, and where I was going with this is, and Dan, and this is my editorialism here, so I apologize in advance, but you guys knew what you're getting into when you tuned in today. My opinion on this is, though, there was a whistleblower situation on the DTCI contract back in the day. I think it was Old Dominion was named. I think a couple carriers might have been named as overcharging the government on the freight side, charging them for air when it went surface or something like that. Then you have the POV contract, and from everything I've heard, again, didn't participate in it, just things I've heard, that was a cluster, cars getting lost all over the place and just lack of accountability. The contractor wanted out of it, and they did the old Bronx Tale, now you can't leave thing, and they closed the door and locked it on them and said, no, you can't get out of the contract, you're going to perform, and then here we are, talking about a sole provider for household goods, and it just seems to not be a great idea. That's just I think
that the real friction comes at the either beginning of or then transition to a new contractor, right? So from handing over from XPO to DTCI to DFTS, but on the POV side, I would tell you that the previous contractor, when I was there, I closed my eyes and would say, "Hey, I got a problem," and they would go solve it, right? I mean, it was that transition between, as one company doesn't get awarded who's the prime and then hands it off to somebody else. That transition piece was, and I was at STDC at that time, and it was a mess. And that's the fear, I think, with this GHC, right? Not only the transition between DP3 and GHC, and then at the end of 3 years and 9 months, or to Michael's point, right, 9 years, because how do you hand it over in the middle of it? You're still going to potentially either A, go through that process again, or B, maybe worse, maybe there's no other person who's even around to bid on that because of the nature of how this is all set up and the huge volume that goes through a single network and how that network was put together in their IT solution and all those kind of things. So,
and Ben, real fast too. So GHC, a lot of times it's compared to the POV, to Amazon. You cannot compare household goods with anything else in this world that I know of. I mean, you're talking about moving one car, not 5,000 pieces of, articles of furniture kind of thing. It's a completely different world.
It's much more multifaceted. And that's when you had Bill Mulholland on and he was talking about the Expedia of moving, the new app that he's creating, that was kind of some of the questions that I peppered him with. I said, listen, our industry is so multifaceted. There's so many things involved with each individual move that you can't just, put it, evaluate it on one or two factors when there's really 100 factors involved with each move. So this is much more multifaceted, much more difficult.
It would be like disassembling the car, shipping it, and reassembling it.
Correct. You're right.
And again, the POV guys, I think the previous contract, I think, was pretty successful. The current one, they finally worked their way through it. And I don't think there's a lot of issues going on with the POV contract. It was those intervening periods. But the difference, to Michael's point in that, is I take my car and I drive it to the location where it's going to be picked up and moved to a port. Nobody comes into my house and takes all my stuff and does it that way. So it's
we've got a lot of comments coming in. I want to address all these and make sure we do everybody a service here. Emily Kozabowski. So U.S. Transcom is adding new parameters that require SCAC owners to declare the company that manages them. Is that so that they can use that data for the purpose of getting more info on these management companies for this rebid of GHC?
My first question or answer to that is that, SCAC management, there's a lot of different facets. Like, for example, you can manage the actual transportation, but outsource claims or scores or many different aspects of it. So I haven't heard a lot about this. Again, Michael and Dan, have you heard a lot about USCC adding parameters?
I think my opinion on it is that the military members are genuinely trying to figure out who is doing their job, right? So this would help them identify who that is. If it's TMM, then or Tier 1 or any management company, sorry to drop names, but then they know. Yeah, they know who to go to. I think that's the primary thing. When a GIPSO person looks at a SCAC, that's all they see is a SCAC. So now if there's some kind of association with it, they know that they can reach out to that move management company is my take on it.
I would agree. And I would say to Emily that the timing of that doesn't match up, right? They're not going to have it on the new tender service with this type of information in time for evaluating bids. I don't think, frankly, I don't think that timing matches up at all. So no, I think it's purely what Michael's saying. They want to get a handle on who can we contact, who's managing the shipment. And, we've actually, as an association, challenged that a little bit in the past when they've said, well, we have people touching the house of goods that we don't know. And our answer to that has been, well, you could ask for that information. I mean, it's your program, right? You could certainly find out.
Yeah, it's true. It is confusing. Think about it from a service member's perspective. You have the TSP name. You have a move management company that's handling it. You have an OA. You have a hauler. You have a DA. So these could be 5 potential different entities with different phone numbers, different email addresses. And if you're just a service member trying to navigate that, it can become incredibly frustrating. So I think it's coming from a good place.
Yeah, I mean, we had Megan Harless on early in this process, and you do sympathize and have compassion for the military member when they're just trying to find out where their stuff is and when people are going to show up. But do you have to tear the whole thing down to give them that information? Probably not. So
no.
It's interesting. Tim Hellenthal says there are 4 different volumes that you are judged on, like technical operations, price, and past performance. That's only 3 prongs, Tim. You get a score in each category. There is no public knowledge of what the trade-off is between these factors.
In Tim's defense, it's actually 4.
It is 4. Technical, operations, price, past performance.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah, I got your back, Tim. I got your back.
Yeah,
and listen, Tim is super well informed of this. I mean, National is involved with one of the bid teams, and listen, when he speaks, people listen because he knows what he's talking about.
you're right. There's a misplaced punctuation, whatever. Social media, fine. Love you, Tim. Appreciate you, fans. Georgia Angle, Dan, will you speak to the comment from Mr. Marsh that clarified that this is not a cancellation of GHC, that is only a review of the bid from the 3 final companies? That is a great point because I made a post today saying it was canceled. What is Georgia talking about? Please tell us, Dan.
Yeah, during our annual meeting on a military and government affairs panel, we asked Mr. Marsh whether he would clarify what his thoughts were or Transcom's thoughts were as they move forward with the announcement of the GAO that come out, and what he wanted to clarify. And then the next week, Vice Admiral Mewborn, the Transcom deputy, kind of said the exact same thing, right? Same talking points, which is that nothing in the GAO decision pointed to the fact that there was a weakness in the thought process of using a single move manager to perform the DoD move. So they wanted that to be known, right? That the protest challenged some of the technical aspects of the contract, but it didn't challenge the soundness of the philosophy of using a contractor to do this work. That was their talking points.
Well, and I would say
what about the second?
A little bit of that is that we haven't gotten that far yet, right? To even protest that part of it. So.
Yeah, I want to address the second part of that, Dan, because I was on that call and I didn't hear him say it's a review of the bid from the final 3 companies, and technically it's final 4 companies. If they're talking about 2 protested, but there were final 4, he was actually a lot more ambiguous than that to me. He basically said that we're reviewing the process and then we'll get back to you. That second part of George's statement, is that true?
I don't know that there was anything about 3 final companies. I think there's certainly a chance that they go back far enough in the proposal process to make it 4 companies bidding again, if all 4 so chose. So
Dan, could they open it up to everybody again?
They could. Depends on how far they want to go back and how much time they're going to take, right? So I think they certainly could do some of that if they wanted to, and they probably have a way if they wanted to restrict it down to the final 4, as it were, when they kind of cut out 2 or 3 other bidders because of whatever reasons, costs or whatever they did, and then came to the final 4. So
I'm hearing that it's most likely going to be a rebid of the final 4. But you know what? That's not official. That's just what the word on the street is.
I mean, if I'm some of these teams though, and I may be looking around and say, well, did I bring the right person to the dance? Can I go back to the drawing board? And if ownership is an issue, or if there's other issues that we didn't do as well, I mean, they may want to crack at rebidding this whole thing. I mean,
if I'm not one of the final 4, I mean, maybe something that was found in the protest speaks to one of my bids too, right?
Very interesting. Let's see here. We've got, Columbia checking in. Chuck White wants to know, so what is the next step in this process?
Ben, let me just address one other thing that, kind of Marsh's comments, and ultimately the leader of this program is General Lyons, right? And he's, in no uncertain terms, stated his intentions, and that's to award GHC and have it up and running. So if I reported to somebody and they basically told me my marching orders, I'm going to stick to those marching orders no matter what I actually think is going to happen, because that's a company line that I need to toe. I think the big question is, what happens if and when General Lyon retires?
Do those commands survive that commander?
That's the question. I mean, the tune can change very quickly. If the line changes, then Marsh, if he's still there, could be saying something very different. So it's not very surprising that he's saying, yeah, full steam ahead. I mean, that's what the leadership wants. But when leadership changes, we'll see what happens. And I think that's a really interesting topic to talk about, is that, put yourself in the shoes of somebody new coming in. Do you view this current process as being a failed or troubled process that you might not want to be involved with? Or, kind of, is this the hill that you want to die on, or is it somebody else's hill to die on? And that's kind of the question here, is what's going to happen when there's a change in leadership?
Dan, would you care to pontificate on this?
Um,
Oded lights it, tosses it over to Dan.
yeah, I think, boy, this is going a lot of different directions. I think that I don't know that the entire staff is necessarily specifically aligned under that guidance. I think at a senior level, you absolutely have to be. And I think once you start going down that road, then you start finding, because it's your job to do it, the reasons why it makes sense, right? So I think something big would have to happen between now and General Lyons leaving for the rest of the staff to kind of flitter away on this topic, right? Or depending on who would come in the door behind them, their personal feelings on the process and how far down the road you are in that process and how much time, effort, energy, and money has been spent on that process. I think there's a whole lot of things associated with that would make it tough to go in a different direction, but not impossible to go in a different direction. But, you need a significant life-altering event to kind of, stop this and go in a different direction at this point.
Well, I would say too, I've listened to other officials at USTC speak about this, Ben, and they speak strong support of GHC. I mean, I'm trying to think of like Major General Ware got online and did something at a spousal household good committee thing, and he spoke very highly of GHC. So you got other people outside. I mean, they're very influential. And I think Rick was put there, Mr. Marsh was put there for a reason, and I think he does believe in it.
Interesting. We got some questions there. We got a driver tuning in, Stephen Meyer. Stephen, I may ask you for some clarification on this. I have a question. Hopefully someone has the grapes to answer it. I have the grapes. Why did everyone stay as quiet as a church mouse when DOD said Amazon does it, instead of saying Amazon can hire someone with a DWI 7 years ago when we can't hire someone who had a DWI 35 years ago?
I can answer the Amazon thing. Well, maybe the quietness of everybody is that I think we're all tired of being compared to Amazon. There's no comparison between Amazon and the household good industry. And we have told them this many times that, you're talking about moving a box, and even they can't deliver during Christmas high peak times, delivering a box on time. I'm not faulting them or beating them up. I'm just saying they even allow leniency. We're not Amazon, and we will never be Amazon.
And I published 8 op-ed pieces on various topics associated with the GHC. And this was one of them. The whole, Amazon doesn't tell, the post office to change Christmas kind of comment that was made, something like that. I probably just messed it up, but some comment like that was made.
Right.
Pre-meetings for the contract. But we put out a op-ed piece on that, tried to push it to whoever would listen to it. I sent it to a bunch of DOD and military types and up to Transcom as well as for their input. Nobody ever kind of responds to those, but they've seen our answer to those types of things.
I want to understand. Oded, tell me what Steven's really talking about here, because I don't 100% understand where he's going with this, because Amazon did not win or even get to the Final Four on this, whether or not they participated.
No, he's talking about driver qualification. A lot of the van lines have very strict regulations for who could be, a qualified driver for them. And certainly a DWI or DUI is something that makes, it's kind of a no-go. So I think he's saying as a freight driver, the level of entry for a driver is maybe a little lower than for a household goods driver for the major van lines. But let's be honest, safety is a big issue. But, I just want to circle back to the one other thing on this Amazon example. Amazon, Uber, these innovators, these came out of market forces. This is not like government went to somebody and said, here's $20 billion, innovate, right? So, to say that this is going to, this is like, innovation, that whatever's going to come out of this, if GHC is going to be naturally innovative, isn't true. It's kind of like you're throwing a lot of money at a problem and hoping for good results. And I don't know if that would be the outcome of GHC. I think Dan is very correct in saying that, the transition period is usually, the most stressful, part of it. And here's the thing, sometimes things fall apart during that transition, during the most difficult part of it. And if it were to fall apart, the risk to the service member and the service they receive is, very, very high. And I guess one thing that I would like everybody to consider is that year after year for about the last 3 years, we've been getting feedback from US Transcom and from service members that the level of service, the quality is getting better and better, that the kind of big issues you used to hear about the past are getting quieter and quieter. The business rules are changing, to ensure better service to the service member. So the question is, are we now getting to a point, especially with this delay, that is the transition, is all the pain and suffering of going through that transition worth it when we're already at a really good place?
Lakeland says, I think IM was very vocal in the pushback to the Amazon comparison. He says, I'm willing to bet that 75% of all Amazon drivers would get denied base access. I think
that's what they're talking about, Ben, is that to get on a base is 35 years of background check.
Yeah. And then
actually, Tim just addressed it. Yeah.
There you go.
All hold in high esteem said the same thing here.
It's even worse than that because every base is different. You'll have one crew that will get on a base on Monday and not get on a different base on Tuesday,
or the same base.
Yeah, or the same base, right?
Yeah, we could spend another hour talking about base access, right? Man, good stuff though. Let's see here. Jana has a question. I think this is kind of what we want to know. The total sum of this whole thing is there any way that GHC will not happen? I mean, where they just say, you know what, screw it, we're not doing this for whatever reason, and we're just going to keep the current TSP DP3 model?
I think so. Of course, there's always that possibility. I would say if you're a business at any level in this program, you better have plan A, plan B, plan C, which is tough, Ben. How do you plan? How do you grow in this environment when you don't know the direction that this is going to go? If in 1 year, in fact, GHC does go through, how do you continue to forecast and grow based on that?
Okay, I want to talk about that, Michael, and I want to give you a chance to expound on that, and I want to hear from Oded as well because he's in a similar position. I want to do around the horn real quick. A one number answer here. What percentage chance? Everybody's gonna be on the hot seat. We're gonna go around the horn. What percentage chance is there that the GHC will not happen at all in the next 5 years? Oded, what percentage chance?
I'd say 50% chance, but I also want to toot my own horn that we had another, Dan, I don't know when it was. It was about a month ago. It was me, you, Chuck Bailey, Chuck White. We were asked the same question about, what is your, will the GHC protests be sustained? And I was the only one that said that they would be. So
okay, Oded. Okay, so yes, you have lots of accolades. You have a phenomenal track record. You're the handicapper du jour on these things.
Right every time.
Okay, all right, fantastic. Oded says 50. Dan, give me a number.
Less than 10.
Less than 10. Oh my gosh, 10. Less than 10%. Michael.
Well, I just wanted to say that Oded picked right in the middle. So how can you lose, Oded? 50%. That was kind of a cop out.
Middle of the fourth quarter. Monday Night Football. Who's going to win the game?
When this first started, I would say that there's an 80% chance that it does not go through. I would say we're at about a 20% chance now.
Wow.
That does not, or it does.
Now it's 20%. 80-20 flip flop. Yeah.
So wow. I'm saying there's a 20% chance that it does not go through.
So now let's go to what you were saying, Michael, because I think it's super interesting, and I don't think anybody's talking about the poor people that have to run a business right now under this uncertainty. How do you run your business? How has that changed? What are these challenges like running a business with this veil of uncertainty looming?
I would say good luck, and when people figure it out, let me know so I can figure out what the strategy is. It's really about, it's the first time that I've ever been in business that you have to have a multitude of plans, and it's all contingent based on something previous. And then at the same time, we are also navigating the current program and the current changes. So you have all these current changes happening. You have GHC looming, plan for a year. I keep hearing everybody say plan for 1 year. That's not what you can do. You can plan for 1 year before you will know whether GHC is going to go through the next time, kind of thing. And I would agree with that. I think all of us on this call would say we're going to get another summer out of this, right? In fact, Mr. Marsh said 2021. We were going to get 2021 in the current DP3 environment. So But I would say that I have never. We've talked about this, like how do agencies buy trucks when they know that this is going to happen? But I will say we're even more uncertain now with what just happened. It's even more uncertain.
Oded, you got bricks and mortar. You got men in trucks. How are you own Scatco? How are you operating right now? Are you aggressive? Are you tentative? Are you scaling back? Are you investing? I mean, what's your mindset right now? How are you running your business?
We're accelerating right off the cliff. What I mean by that is we're putting, more investment into warehouses, trucks, men. But the belief is that no matter, who controls the program, that there's going to be a need for people to do the work. And ultimately, if that's where your investment is, and if you can provide a high quality and reliable services, then there will be people that want to utilize that. I know all of the GHC bidders, and even the, people from Team ARC that, formerly were awarded it. None of them are monsters. It's not necessarily a doomsday scenario if one wins it. It just means a lot of uncertainty, like Michael said. And so, I think that we face this with stock market crashes. We face this with a pandemic. There's a lot of uncertainty going on. And the only thing that I've ever known is to just keep on holding the steering wheel steady, accelerate, work as hard as you can, and good things will happen. So that's the attitude that I'm taking with this.
All right. I love that attitude, and I think it's a great
segment. Can I agree to disagree real fast with Oded? Sorry.
There's always time for dissent.
So I would, I don't think that the comment that there's enough work, I guess the concept is it doesn't matter who wins it, there will be work out there for you. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think in some markets that's very true. But you get into smaller markets, and if you have a relationship, Oded, it's great that you have relationships with all of them. But there are some people who don't have relationships with all of them. And if you're in a small market, you could be out of business. I mean, I'm just trying to speak the truth there. There might not be enough work for them to even allocate you shipments.
Good point.
And depending on what flag van line maybe wins, right, and who they're feeding, who's first in the pecking order now, and you could have been third on the pecking order, and now you're ninth, and that's a whole different. And based on
the relationship. And I hear Ben all the time. They say there's enough work, or don't worry. I'm like, if I were affiliated with the person who won, I better get first right of refusal before someone else who has no affiliation. I get quality is also a factor into that, but I wouldn't. It'd be pretty naive of me to think that there's not going to be some preferential treatment to the affiliated person in that market.
Hey, can I cut in on a really important point?
Yeah.
Is this thing going to end fairly soon, or do I need to go turn some lights on? Because the sun's going.
I think you look amazing. It's quite romantic, actually.
I thought you were going to light candles, Dan.
Yeah, is it gonna get darker? That's a good question to ask.
Well, Ben, do we have more questions? Is there more activity in the chat box?
Yeah, we got some more questions, and if you got some questions here, I can probably convince.
I like dancing in the dark. It's kind of romantic,
Yeah,
right.
It is.
Like Netflix and chilling with Dan over.
That's what we should have called this session. Paul DeBoer, thanks for organizing this discussion, Ben. Appreciated. Paul's from WHR Group, a prominent relocation management company. I think it's interesting to see, people who aren't even in the military moving are tuning in to understand the implications. And I think this is a good segue into winners and losers. Okay. Which is my favorite segment. If I had segments, if I had that much kind of production value. But yeah, we're talking about who's winning and who's losing in this GHC pullback right now. Let's talk about the small independent agent. Oded, is
definite winner. As independent movers, winner because of the sustained protest. Another year or two in the current DP3 environment, bigger opportunity to do what Michael says that not everybody's doing, which is networking with all the bidders, more time to prepare. Good news for sure. Winners.
What do you think, Michael?
I would agree with Oded. The small agencies out there, this is a win for them right now. I guess it depends on what side of the fence you're on, right? Again, if you're affiliated with the bidder, this could have been pretty nice for you. But I think overall, everybody wins. No one really loses because they have another year to just kind of cement those relationships, continue to build. And I will say with Oded is that if you're not, there's always ways to capitalize in opportunities like this, right? There's always ways to win. So I would look at something like this and go, okay, where can I fit in? Where can I put my peg in order to capitalize on an opportunity like this? And this gives you a year to do that.
What about the drivers? What about drivers? You know, there was a concept that this was going to put more money to the curb and stuff like that. I mean, does the driver?
How do you know that, though, Ben? How do you answer that unless you know what they're going to pay out? You don't.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they're winners as well because if certainty, again, they know what they're going to be doing for the next year, next 2 years, and so the phrase "the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know." At least now they know how to plan, how to feed their families for the next year or two. With GHC on the horizon, sure, it could have paid more, it could have paid less. Who's getting the work? We don't know. So I would say the certainty makes it a win for them, although I wouldn't say the situation drastically changes.
Lakeland asks, he challenges this. How do you reconcile this as a win for the small movers when the small movers have been losing revenue at an accelerated pace in the current program?
Who wants to answer?
Michael, you want us to take a shot at this? I mean, listen. First of all, I know Lake really well.
I will real fast, and I know Lakeland really well too. But I will say that agents have some play and responsibility with that. I mean, you don't have to do work for somebody. You can control some of it to a degree. I'm not going to say so far though that there isn't some responsibility on the TSP. There obviously is, right? But I will say that part of this is I with the uncertainty of GHC, who knows what the pricing was going to be? It could have been, the grass might not be greener on the other side. I don't know.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll tell Lake is that how you split the pie is one thing, but there's no question that from a rate reasonableness, average rate during the summer, things have gotten better, especially this past year. So I think it's hard to say that, this year in particular was a tough year for agents and independents to make money. I would take the reverse position on that. I think it's probably was a better year than years in the past.
Yeah, I think that's I think you make a great point, Oded. Let me ask another constituency here. What about the military member, right? I mean, this whole thing came about because of a change.org petition from military spouses. We've had Miss Megan Harless on the show here, she's friend of the program. I think her position may have even changed. I don't want to speak for her as she's begun to kind of understand more things. But does the military family, are they a winner or a loser in this?
Let's give Dan this one.
Great.
Dan?
In the sustainment of the protest, you're talking specifically, right?
Yeah, yes, correct. With the current present state of affairs, yes.
Yeah, I think people have been very aware, right, of requirements and wanting to do the job that they can do. I think we've been more aware of the issues that people like Megan Harless has brought up, the military members. I think those things have resonated with Transcom and with the GIPSOs. And so, I think that for the most part, right, a broad brush probably doesn't apply here, but for the people who are engaged, the people that you hear names of all the time associated with the companies that are at our conference and are on things like this and are commenting in your chat box, and those who are really engaged in the program are hyper aware of those types of issues. And so they have another opportunity to kind of, go down the same road, continue to heighten, their staffs and their training and all those kind of things. And I think those things are happening. And I think you see that, as Oded mentioned, in the kind of the uptick of CSS to a pretty good level that has surprised even the DoD that we got to the levels that we've gotten to over the last couple of years, 2019 and 2020. And so I think that's, again, people are kind of very concerned with how things are going to go. And so they're paying really close attention. And I think that's better for the customer. Ultimately, there's improvements to be had. But I think that, that type of awareness and staying engaged in the program and learning about what's going on because you're afraid or need to figure out what's going to happen in the future, makes people more responsive to the customer in that way.
Dan, can I just follow up on that? Would you agree with my statement that the last few peak seasons in particular, this one last year, that the feedback that we've gotten from the services, and I'm not saying that there aren't examples of bad moves here and there, but that things have been getting better, quieter, more successful peak seasons? Is that the general feedback that we're getting?
It is, and we have gotten that feedback, and yet I guess every time that kind of comes out, somebody in the DoD side will raise a specific issue that they say we're still not getting it, and I think that's just a part of not wanting people to rest on their laurels, right? They don't want to give the overall thought process that we've reached the summit and there's no further to go. And so I think, yes, generally speaking, people will say that it's been successful. I'll tell you, on the last J9 call, Transcom call, Vice Admiral Mewborn, who is the Deputy Commander of Transcom, stated specifically that he has talked to all of the Service 4s, all the logistics people in the services who are responsible for transportation, and they've all complimented him and the efforts that have gone forward on this last peak season, and they thought it's gone way better and the quality was higher, and they wanted to thank Transcom for that, and Transcom passed that along and wanted to thank the TSPs for that and the agents involved in the program for that effort as well.
And I think that's with the crazy environment we're in. I mean, a pandemic environment.
Yeah. I think that's not a drum that we beat enough in this industry to talk about, the good things that are happening. And I guess, that was my point to you before, Ben, that if we can continue that trend, and that's the feedback that the new commander is getting, that things are going really well, and then you have, let's say, a few more hiccups with GHC, they might really start reevaluating the logic here. What are we doing here in the first place?
The thing that
50% chance.
The thing that I would tell you that won't happen, though, is that GHC would go away and the program would stay as it is, right? If GHC were to go away, there would be some drastic changes to the program. There's almost, to me anyway, no doubt about it. What those are, I don't know. But the DoD would not just say, okay, we're going back to our, it might be a tender and tariff environment, yes, but here's the rules now. We're gonna make some.
Well, you're saying a bigger or more drastic change in the changes that we have every single year, which some of them are pretty drastic. I mean, the relay rules. We're talking about redefining SIT delivery. I mean, we're not talking about small things. You're saying if GHC goes away, they take much bigger steps than what we see on a gradual yearly basis?
I would guess that they'd restructure the whole program in some ways. Yep.
Wow.
Dan told me that the LOI was coming back.
Start that rumor. Put that in the chat.
Oh man. Interesting. Georgia, we got some great comments here. Georgia says, remember the other important issue is the need for a better technology solution. Lakeland says the exact same thing happened back right before DP3 claims went down, service went up. When rates went up, they still dropped the TOPS program anyway. Talking about the money that's in the business right now, Steve Miser, the driver, says stupid money.
I wonder which way does that go? Is that like good or bad?
That's good. I think that's good. He's running out of Virginia, I believe, if I recall correctly.
I mean, that's a great area. I mean, if
that lane is hot.
Yeah, really hot.
Lakeland says better is relative. Oded, better doesn't make good. Lakeland says, though I agree the peak had better margins than previous years, of the COVID volume killed the potential.
He's right.
Yeah. Chuck White says, great comment, George, about the technology is going to have to change. What are some of the other key fundamental changes, Dan, that you think are that they're going to push regardless of, even if this didn't happen? Georgia brings up technology. I think those of us who use the DPS technology and the other stuff would agree. But what are some of the other key things that they're trying to push for, Dan? Regardless.
Well, I don't know. There are things that I don't think they would push for in the current program with the GHC on the horizon that I think they might push for if the GHC went away. And again, I'm not a betting man to say that it's going to go away necessarily, but so you're saying there's a chance. There's a chance. But there are things that has always frustrated the DoD going back for many years, and you guys talked about some of it already, which is who's moving my shipment, right? And the thing that General Lyons talked about to a group of us when this all started happening after 2018 was, he didn't like the fact that he didn't know who he was talking to, and he didn't like the fact that people could, in his mind, his words, play games and hide a SCAC here, use a SCAC there. He didn't like the there are CFAC things that maybe could be different in the domestic program, things like that I think that they would look at and try and make the lines of responsibility much clearer, which they're trying to do even in the current program to some extent, right? By having you for this next year, put in, if somebody manages your SCAC, let us know who that is. Those kinds of things. But well beyond that, I think, is where they would go. They want clarity. They want a simple, line. They want a simple chart to be able to draw to say, this is who's responsible for my shipment, and this is where the responsibility goes. And you can't, hide this SCAC. You can't have a paper SCAC. You can't, all those kind of things, key buzzwords that people have said, that I think that the DoD would look at it and say, okay, we're not going contract. Well, here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to fundamentally change the program in some other ways. And it would be about some of those kinds of things.
I mean,
and Chuck beat me to the punch. I mean, really, this is what they've complained about, is reducing the number of TSPs and the parties they have to work with. I mean, that's been, I've been in this industry for ever.
I want to say it's not necessarily reduce the number of TSPs, because if there's 800 TSPs, I mean, there's certainly more than 800 companies that service military work. It's getting the TSPs aligned with the people that are actually doing the work, I think, is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think.
So, I think it is reducing the number of TSPs is probably something that you would see, because.
But I mean, couldn't you also make a case for expanding the number of TSPs, just making them real TSPs, like getting to the point where every moving company, right, like just in real life, Ben's Moving and Storage of Farmington Hills, Michigan, has a SCAT code because they operate men in trucks, and all my, Ben, Olivia, Danny, Stevie SCAT codes go away, and I'm one SCAT code because I have one location, and maybe every location has a SCAT code, almost like on the SMO situation, right? You're not going to give a storage shipment to a paper warehouse, right? So you give a SCAT code to all the SMO eligibles, and then you eliminate the ones that don't have SCAT codes, and you CFAC the domestic, which you did on the international, and then, I mean, aren't you kind of almost there?
That's what
now you just opened a can of worms, Ben. Jeez.
I think that's where you would see people heading to if the GHC didn't happen. And again, I have no insight on that specifically, but that's where I think you would see some changes coming down the road. And Tim Hellenthal always says the DoD got the program they designed, right? So it's not, we're not taking a shot at anybody who has multiple SCACs or any of that kind of stuff, because they designed the program.
Right.
And good businessmen and women, Georgia and others, find a way to take advantage of that environment, and that's exactly, they got the program they designed. But I'd love to say we wouldn't create this program if we were designing it today. Well, you did create the program. The DoD created.
I mean, Chuck says DoD wants to deal with fewer companies. I think the DoD wants to deal with the actual companies. I mean, yes,
I would say, Ben, what DoD is trying to accomplish is figure out capacity tied into the SCAC. They want that if a SCAC is in the program, that it has X amount of capacity. And right now they can't tie that in. They just feel like they're dealing with what you call paper companies.
X amount of capacity and the actual quality of that SCAC, right?
Correct.
Those two things.
One thing I would say is that you can't, I know they want to speak to less people, but we need diversity in this industry. We need the mom and pops. We need the large van lines. We need all the people in the middle. And to give away the seats at the table and to only place it into one large carrier and hope that, the trickle down theory will work, I think is just a big mistake. So, I mean, I think the diversity in the industry is one major reason why I think GHE shouldn't happen, or what would be my preference.
Yeah, you're getting farther away from me.
So I can turn the lights on here.
Go.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. It's just one squeaky wheel. We don't have to change the whole program for one squeaky wheel, Dan. Okay. No, this has been great. We've gotten to pretty much all the comments here. For those of you who don't know, SCAC holder, TSP, transportation service provider, used interchangeably for the purpose of this conversation. This has been a great conversation. We'll give Tim Hellenthal the last word. Potential capacity doesn't mean anything if I'm not guaranteed any traffic. Word. Thanks, Tim. That's great. No, this has been fantastic. I do want to give each of you the opportunity to just leave us with a final thought here as we like to close out. And we will go kind of in is that clockwise order there. Michael, why don't you just leave us with a final thought here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all just trying to figure out how to navigate these changes and what the future holds. I would tell everybody, hang in there. Everybody's doing great. I feel like, in all the negative in today's world, and I'm not trying to spin it like this feel good feeling, but we're doing the industry is doing a terrific job overall. And I think it's proven. We talked about it, the CSS scores. Yes, do we screw up? Yeah, it happens. Everybody does. But I want to let everybody know that I think everybody's doing a terrific job out there, and just keep plugging away at it, and we'll keep our ear to the ground to try to figure out what's next.
Thank you, Michael. Dan?
Hey, I would just say stay tuned, right? There's a lot of changes, and there's a lot of zigzags probably still to come, and you got to stay tuned into this so you can do the things that Michael and Oded have talked about, right? Where are you going to put your money, where are you going to put your resources and time, and things like this are great for that. Can I make one plug too, since we're talking about that?
Sure, Dan.
IAM has a session on the 4th talking about reviewing the election, what the election means for a host of issues, including taxes, COVID-19, immigration, FMCSA regulations, all those kind of things. So tune into that at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Is that Wednesday?
1 o'clock Eastern, Wednesday, 2 days from now. And where can they find that, Dan?
They can find it on our website, but you can go to IAM Learning, and there's in LinkedIn, if you kind of hit up Brian Limperopoulos or any of the IAM link or LinkedIn or Facebook page, you can find a link there too to go to.
Do they have to be an IAM member to view that?
I don't believe so, but you're asking the wrong. I'm just an IAM staffer, Ben.
So, man, you're wearing the shirt, dude. These are the questions you're going to get, dude. If I go to Target and I'm wearing that colored shirt, I'm going to get questions. All right, Dan? No, I wear a tie to the grocery store. I get questions all the time. Oded, I was going to give you a little moment to freestyle here with your final thought, but actually Georgia wants you to play the hits. She says, what is the GHC timing explanation you wanted to give from Brucey B, Bruce Boyard?
Yeah, Bruce might share this with some people. Georgia, you can follow up with me. I know you got my email. So basically he has it going through about January of 21 for the RFP to come out again or to be revised and submission of proposals. He has it going through May, June of 2021 for the proposals to be evaluated. He does put in, and Dan, maybe you could explain this. Possible delay, there should be any pre-award protests. So what they can now, there's not only award protests, you can protest the pre-award status, Dan?
Well, that happened already, the pre-bid. That's how we got to a little bit of backup on the bid when they talked about the somebody IAM supported a protest with the TSP about that issue associated with the release of information, the unauthorized release of information. And that protest also was about some ambiguity with the nature of the contract and the award process. So we got that one portion of it wasn't sustained, but Transcom took it back and just made an adjustment. Therefore, GAO dismissed it.
So he's putting in the kind of possible. So this is without this happening, and he's kind of saying, hey, that at every one of these steps, there's a possibility for another protest to be filed, and he's got that at about 3 or 4 different levels here. So that to understand the level of complexity, let me cut to short. Basically, he has it. Should there not be any major delays, that begin the domestic market performance scaling. What I mean by the performance scaling is, you guys remember, the program is supposed to start in February, 25, 50, 75, 100 over 4-month period. So he's putting that in September of 2022 when that would the scaling would start. Sorry, scaling begins in May, ends in September.
Georgia says, so Bruce's timeline is assuming there will be a new RFP. Does he have a timeline without a new RFP?
You know what, Georgia? I'll send you this document and I'll have you put in touch with Bruce. And in all fairness, I did ask Bruce whether this is something I could share, I could talk about. He said yes. So Georgia, I wouldn't have any problem telling you that. Let me move to my last statement, though. It's an important one. You ready, Ben? You ready for this?
I am, but we have another request. It's like Billy Joel, and then somebody says, right, Piano Man. And we you got to give the people what they want. Emily's saying talk about the dab.
I was good. I was going to do it, Emily. You beat me to it. So
we have a very educated audience, Oded. Go ahead.
We got 3 dabbers right in here. We got Michael Gonzalez, part of our task force. I co-chaired along with Chuck Bailey, and we have our kind of czar from the industry side, Dan Bradley, who's our staff that basically keeps the show running. And if you're not aware, USDAB stands for U.S. Domestic Asset-Based Mover, not the Domestic Advisory Board, which is what Ben told me one day. Which I thought was really funny. And it's a group, a lot of people like Lake are involved with it. It's basically giving guidance to IM on how it can grow its foothold within the domestic market. People perceive IM as the international or the Association of International Movers, and it's really not. It's for all movers, including domestic movers. Join IM, and we have a lot of programs that will benefit you. And then I'll lead into one other thing. If I saw this as a roller coaster, which it definitely has been, we are still in the beginning stages of that roller coaster going up and down. And there are still a lot bigger hills to climb and go down on. So like Dan said, stay tuned. This is going to continue going in many, many directions that we can't even predict. And who knows where we're going to end up. So definitely interesting time to be alive. And with great people around me like Michael and Dan and you, Ben, very happy to continue talking about it.
This is great. Thanks so much to everybody who's tuned in today. Thanks for all the fantastic questions and comments and your interest and attention. Thank you so much. Please do remember to go out and vote tomorrow. Get there early. Can't wait to hear everybody's thoughts from the polls. And, it should be an interesting week. And this is a great way to start it off. So Oded, Michael, Dan, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and take care. And we hope to hear soon as more developments emerge.